Chapter 20 of The Calling. Talia. He leaned against a stall talking to two men drinking some cider. His clothes were different than the last time I saw him, but I could never forget that face or how he made my skin crawl. He angled his face toward me as he addressed one of the men. And despite the dim lighting, I looked over the terrible scar that stretched across the left side of his face. Seeing him filled me with unease. What was a king's guard doing here in Hatley? Why wasn't he wearing his uniform? 2 young women had been kidnapped from this town. We would have known. No young women had been kidnapped from this town. We would have known. Caffrey, are you okay? Raph asked. His words were laced with concern. I turned, completely forgetting we were in the middle of an argument. His grip tightened around my wrist. I spun back to where the guard had been standing, but he was gone. I scanned the crowd, searching for his face. Talia, what's going on? Raph's voice had a serious edge to it. I thought I saw someone. I walked off to the dance floor, scouring the crowd. Who? I ignored Raph and kept pushing through the people to the stall he had been standing at. Suddenly, a large frame blocked my path. Caffrey, tell me who you saw, Raph demanded. Too exhausted to fight with him anymore, I answered. I thought I saw one of the king's guards that came to Jules' house after she was taken. Stepping around him, I continued to make my way, knowing he followed closely behind me. Are you sure? Yes. He wasn't wearing a uniform, but I can never forget that scar. I shivered. Raph grabbed my hand and started pulling me the other way. We need to find Alone right now, he seethed. I need to find the guard. I have to ask him some questions. Alone will help. Raph's grip tightened around my wrist, and for the first time I saw something close to worry in his eyes. Glancing around and finding no sign of the guard, I sighed. Fine. We found Alone with the rest of our party. They cheered while watching Eaton and Mr. Grady arm wrestle. Raph didn't hesitate as he walked straight to Alone and whispered in his ear. I couldn't hear what Raph said, but his expression the expression that crossed Alone's face said plenty. A mix of frustration and calculation. Alone whispered something back to Raph and then pivoted and spoke to Nadav and Hafsa, who were standing closest to him, once again leaving me in the dark. What's going on? I implored. Raph walked past me to Adira, dripping his head to whisper something to her ear. I was prepared to demand an answer from him when Alone broke the silence. We have had such an incredible time with you all. We can't thank you enough for your hospitality and friendship. He spoke directly to the Clans and Grady's, but we need to say our goodbyes. It is getting late, and we need to head out at first light. You can't go yet. The festival isn't over, Gemma cried out. Shh, Gemma. It's getting late for us as well. Mrs. Kalan consoled her daughter. Gemma ran to me, and I swept her up into a hug. My throat burned from the sudden emotion. You're the bravest person I've ever met, and I am so thankful for our time together. Don't forget, I am always with you, I said. I touched my fingers to the pendant around her neck. Hatley needs you. I wish you didn't have to go. Gemma dropped her head and wiped the tears from her face with the back of her hand. Will you come back and visit us after you find your friend? She asked hopefully. That's a wonderful idea. Jules would love to meet you. I kissed her on the forehead, giving her one more tight squeeze before releasing her to her parents. As I watched the Clans and Grady's make their way back to their calling, I couldn't help but pray they wouldn't allow things to go back to the way they were. That Gemma and Jared would have each other like how I had Jules. Talia. I turned back to find Alone waving me over. We must get back to the tavern. We all took up residence around what had become our table. We were the only ones inside. The owner was still out enjoying the festivities, yet everyone continued to speak in such hushed tones to one another. I was beyond frustrated at this point. I had had enough of the secrets. It was time for some answers. Someone needs to tell me what's going on now, I shouted over all their voices in the room. Everyone stared at me as if they noticed me for the first time. Talia, can you confirm that the man you saw was the one of the king's guards? The man with the long scar on the left side of his face, Alon asked me in a stern but calm voice. Yes, I told Raph I would never be able to forget his face. It was the same guard who was in Gazmere. Now, tell me why you guys are freaking out, I demanded, not backing down this time. We've also encountered him in other villages we have visited while tracking the kidnappers. Why is that such a big deal? They are also searching for the kidnappers, so shouldn't it be expected that you will run into them? You're right, we would expect to run into them, since we are searching for the same Alon. Raph interrupted with a weary voice. No, he said, holding up his hand to silence him. Talia is correct, but you see, Talia running into them here is fortuitous. We'll be able to follow them, and hopefully they will lead us to the kidnappers, or at least allow us to find their trail again. We have lost some ground staying and helping the people of Hatley, but if we hadn't stayed here as long as we have, we would never have come across the king's guards. It seems predestined. They were hiding something from me. Adira alone gave her a sharp nod toward the door. She pushed off the wall and leaned against behind me and exited, having already changed out of her dress. Adira will be able to find them without being seen, Alon said, addressing my confusion. Because this is Hatley's only tavern, my guess is that they are camping in the forest outside of the village. We must be ready to leave once Adira comes back. Pack your things, Alon ordered. Everyone got up and went to our respective rooms. I was glad we were going to be on our way, but I could have done with a good night's sleep first. I packed my things, which didn't take long since I barely had anything to pack, and I sat on my cot waiting for Adira to return. I wasn't naive. They were keeping me in the dark about something, but there could be many reasons behind their strange behavior. They could have broken the law, and now we were running from the king's guard, for all I knew, or they could just be trying to be extra cautious because of Nadav and Hafsa. I didn't have much time to think about it as the door to my room opened swiftly and Adira strolled in. Are you ready? Her voice came out sharply. She didn't wait for my answer. She grabbed her bag, which was already packed, and motioned for me to follow. Everyone had assembled outside the tavern, and we joined them. We followed Adira toward the village gate.